All right, so today we're diving into a theory that is, well, about as ambitious as it gets. Imagine trying to connect the entire universe, all of physics, with the thoughts and feelings inside your own head. That's the goal of something called Crippin's theory. It's on a quest for this one single universal principle of balance that could, just maybe, be the key to, well, everything. So let's jump in and see what this is all about. So the whole thing kicks off with this really powerful question. You know that feeling of balance, of harmony that we're all looking for in our lives? Or the kind you see in nature? The theory asks, what if that's not just a feeling, not just a nice idea? What if it's actually a formula, something real, something you can measure? Like a fundamental law of physics, but for things clicking together. And that leads us to the core claim, the big idea right here. The theory proposes that a single principle of, let's call it harmonic balance, is the foundation for everything. And I mean everything. We're talking about a connection that stretches from the way galaxies are shaped, down to the spin of a single atom, and then all the way back up to, you guessed it, your own emotional state. It's a huge, huge idea, right? Trying to build this bridge between the hard, cold facts of science and, our own inner lives. Okay, so how on earth do you even begin to test an idea that big? Well, this is where the theory gets really interesting. It moves away from just being a philosophy and steps right into the world of mathematics. The logic is, if balance is a real, universal constant, then it has to have an equation. And here it is. This is the Atlas T equation. The theory basically tries to, and I'm quoting here, give coherence a number. So let's break it down. T is our constant of balance, and to get T, you multiply three things together. P for proportion, the Greek letter kappa for phase, and R for resonance. Proportion, phase, and resonance. Got it? Now I know that sounds super abstract, right? But stick with me, because there's a great analogy here. Just picture you're running a marathon. Okay, so P, proportion, that's your stride, the perfect length, the ideal geometry for your body's movement. Then you've got kappa, phase. That's your pacing. It's that perfect rhythm, that constant little adjustment you're making so you don't burn out after the first mile. And finally, R, resonance. That's your sustained energy. It's that coherent power that just keeps you going, that stops you from hitting a wall. And when you get all three of those things just right, boom, you hit T, that state of perfect, effortless, sustainable balance. And this is a really, really important point. According to Crippin's theory, balance isn't what we usually think it is. It's not about being perfectly still like a statue. It's not some final destination you get to and then you're done. No way. It's an active rhythm. It's something you're constantly doing, a continuous adjustment. The source material calls it a rhythm of reciprocity, which is just a fancy way of saying it's a give and take. And that's what makes it resilient, right? Because it's always moving, always adapting. All right, so if this math can describe a marathon runner, where does it go next? Well, this is where the theory takes its next giant leap. It claims that these exact same principles, proportion, phase, resonance, are actually the fundamental language of our consciousness, of the human mind. So let's see how that's supposed to work. So the theory says our minds think in a sort of grammar made of four basic shapes, four geometric primitives. First up, we've got the triangle. Think about it. It's pointy, it has direction, it represents clarity. It's the shape of focused attention, of making a sharp decision or setting a clear goal. It's that mental spark that says, let's go. Okay, next shape, the circle. No sharp edges, no endpoint. It's all about connection, wholeness, continuity. Psychologically, this is the shape of empathy. It's about being aware of our relationships, and it's that internal loop of emotional self-regulation that lets us connect with other people and with ourselves. Then we have our third shape, the square. What does a square make you think of? Stability, right? A solid foundation. Structure. This is the geometry of our executive function. That's the project manager in your brain that creates systems, sets boundaries, and gives you that feeling of being safe and grounded. And for our last shape, we have the spiral. This one is all about growth, evolution, integration. Think about how a spiral works. It circles back around, but on a new level. The idea here is that's how we learn. Our past experiences don't just disappear. They fold into our present, and they become the launching pad for future insights. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, let's pause for a second. We've got a mathematical equation for balance, and we've got this geometric language for our own minds. But how in the world do you connect those two things? How do you prove that this isn't all just a really beautiful, poetic metaphor? Well, what's really interesting is that the theory doesn't shy away from that question. In fact, it tackles it head on. The source material basically says, yeah, linking atomic physics to how you're feeling today, that seems like a huge leap, doesn't it? It acknowledges that making a claim that big demands some serious real-world proof. So, to try and build that bridge from mind to matter, the theory actually proposes an experiment. It's a plan to make all this stuff measurable. Basically, you'd ask people a few simple questions. Which of these shapes best represents how you feel right now? Then, what color feels right for that shape? And finally, on a scale of 1 to 7, how in tune do you feel? The whole point is to collect a ton of data and see if patterns show up. Like, do people who choose the circle consistently report feeling more in tune? It's a way to find some real numbers behind the ideas. Okay, so we've gone from physics to the human mind, but the theory doesn't stop there, not even close. It then expands outward to its most ambitious application yet, using these exact same principles of harmony and balance to literally design and build entire cities. And this quote from the source material really just says it all, doesn't it? A world built not on power, but on proportion. It's about a fundamental shift in how we think about building our world, moving away from a mindset of force and control and toward one based on harmony and balance. So, what would a city like this actually look like? Well, the theory lays out some key principles. First, the architecture would use things like the golden ratio, proportions you see everywhere in nature. Instead of gridlock streets, you'd have smooth, circular transit loops designed for flow. The green spaces, the parks, they would grow in fractal patterns, expanding naturally like the veins on a leaf. And get this, the biggest idea is that these cities would be nodes in a massive planet-wide grid shaped like a dodecahedron, a 12-sided shape. And this isn't just some sci-fi fantasy. No, the theory gets very specific. It has a flagship proposal for a real place, the Hollywood Amphitheater Valley Project. It's a detailed plan to actually apply these principles and completely redesign a part of Hollywood. And this is where you can see how that philosophy gets turned into actual rules, into laws. For one, the city would be built down into the land to harmonize with it, not pave over it. You wouldn't find any big corporate chains. It's all independent artisans and growers. They'd have a law of equal proportion, which means for every square foot of concrete, there has to be a square foot of living green space. And my personal favorite, a darkness protocol. All advertising lights are banned after dark, so you can actually see the stars again. Imagine that. You know, when you pull it all together, it brings us right back to the heart of the theory. It doesn't matter if we're talking about a math equation, our own consciousness, or an entire city. The goal is always the same, finding the underlying structure that makes connection and understanding possible. It's this incredible idea that empathy itself might have a kind of geometry, a harmonic blueprint. So, what are we supposed to take away from all of this? Crippin's theory is, well, it's a lot. It's this massive attempt to connect the dots between physics, architecture, and our own minds. So after all that, what are we left with? And that brings us to the final question, really, the one for you to think about. Is this a literal blueprint for universal harmony, a set of instructions we could actually follow? Or is it something else? Is it a beautiful, powerful new metaphor for a search that's as old as humanity itself, that search for meaning, for connection, for balance? That's what we'll leave you to chew on.